Irian Jaya. It was still called Netherlands, New Guinea in the early 1960s when I traveled with my wife into the jungle swamps where a tribe called the Sawi had their villages. Though I had no way of knowing it then, we had come down the Konkel River with the same trust that a tribesman named Mavo had, only a year before. I realize now what danger we were in, from a people who held treachery as their highest virtue. Mavo was a Sawi from the upstream village of Hainam, who found himself dangerously close to Kamur territory. Both were Sawi villages, Kamur and Hainam, that had been feuding for centuries. I wonder if they'd spotted us, the headhunters of Kamur, as they had Mavo. Recklessly, perhaps, Mavo took time to rest on the riverbank and drink. The Kamur warriors assured Mavo that they meant no harm. Rather, they wished to bestow upon him an honor. Would he consent to be a go-between his village of Hainam and their own village, Kamur? Mavo demanded proof of sincerity, proof against treachery. The Kamur spokesman offered Mavo a part of his own body as proof.
Dero. Yeah, Dero.
Putting suspicion out of mind, Mavo broke his journey and returned to Hainam with the news. Being chosen as a go-between raised his prestige considerably in his own village. It was Mavo's pride more than good sense that carried him on his first visit to Kamur. He was received as a friendly ambassador, escorted into the manhouse. And any lingering fear of treachery was forgotten. Mavo couldn't wait to get home, where he dazzled his village with the account of his reception. Afterwards, he made many trips to Kamur over several months. Always, he was received with warm friendship. This time, they honored him with a fine feast, with all the warriors of Kamur attending. Of wild pig, of grubs, We have fattened you with friendship for the slaughter. Mavo's head would be cut from his body, the brains eaten ritualistically. The jawbone would be made into a neck ornament to honor a woman. His flesh would be cooked and eaten by the village. It was a celebration of treachery played out with the subtlety and refinement of a game of chess. For the Sawi, treachery was the highest virtue. I was to learn of the slaughter of Mavo and come to feel its effects much later. The Sawi were virtually untouched then, their language unknown. I had come to Khmur 2 weeks before with another missionary and with sign language had tried to make clear that I was coming back with my wife to live among them. For Carol and me, it was the end of a long journey. Before we met, Carol and I, each of us had made a commitment. We'd prepared ourselves at the same school in Canada, Prairie Bible Institute.
For instance, take Netherlands, New Guinea, where there are many men still living in the Stone Age. You may be the one called upon to make the first advance into the midst of entire tribes that have never known any kind of government control, where the people are a law unto themselves. You must reach them for Christ through languages never before learned by an outsider. There won't be any dictionaries to help you. You will have to produce your own. You will be encountering customs and beliefs that will be baffling to you.
We were in Sawi territory now, approaching the village of Khmur.
I told you we'd return. I've brought my wife with me. We're here to build a home. We're going to learn your language and your customs. We're going to bring you good news.
Once the villagers got over their shyness, they received us warmly. When word got out that a strange man and wife, who couldn't speak their tongue, were living among them, Sawi tribesmen in full regalia arrived from up and down the river to welcome us. At last, Kamur settled down to the routines of daily living, which among the Sawi had changed little in 1,000 years. We were heartened by the love that Sawi parents gave to their children, how they treasured them. But at that time, over half the Sawi babies born died before reaching childhood. For everyone, death was at every turn. Funerals were frequent. Death from sickness, from wild beasts. Death brought about by the endless warfare between Sawi villages. They'd wail, "O message of immortality, promised by our ancestors, where are you?" But we'd brought something that could help, medicine. The mothers began coming to Carol, who trained as a registered nurse.
Okay, there goes. Давай, piece of hole.
It didn't take long for the men to realize that the steel axes I brought were superior to the stone axes they were used to. So I traded tools for their help in building a house for Carol and me. They learned fast. With Isai, one of their leaders, acting as a kind of tutor, we set ourselves to learn the Sawi language.
Banana, banana.
Horop,
Korop,
horop,
horop, horop, horop. Horop. Eat banana.
horopadon,
Horopadon. Horopadon.
horopadon,
Horopadon.
horopadon.
Paddle, paddle.
What do?
What
do?
What do?
What do?
What do?
What do asiran?
What do asiran? What do asiran?
What do asiran?
What do asiran?
What do asiran? Taunin,
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 Taunin.
taunin.
Taunin. Sin gike favinanai saden. Jesus timindigav sinav.
At last I could speak Sawi well enough to tell them the story of God giving his son to save us. They listened politely, but I got a deeper insight when I told them about Jesus' betrayal by Judas. To a people to whom treachery is the highest ideal, Judas emerges as a hero. With all our trying, no one would listen. There must be some way, I told myself, some tribal custom through which we could reach them with the message we'd come to bring. There was, though we weren't prepared for the way it came upon us. The women were first to give the alarm. The warriors of the village of Hainan had come to challenge Kamur to battle. There was bad blood between them, and old wrongs to settle, such as the killing of Mavo. Isai accepted the challenge for Kamur, with boasting and with threats. The battles went on over weeks, weeks that became months. We tended the wounded and prayed. Carol and I had prepared for our calling. We had always depended on what we'd learned. Now, we were reduced to absolute dependence on God. Oh God, it was you who led us to these warring people. How can we persuade them to make peace when they honor treachery above everything else? Finally, I gave Isai an ultimatum. Either Kamur and Hainan stop the war, or we'd move to another Sawi village. They wanted us to stay. Because they wanted our steel axes and our medicines, Isai persuaded them to make peace. I wondered by what means they could show that they really meant peace, that their peace offer wasn't another ruse to fatten their enemies with friendship for a greater slaughter. Hainam on one side, Kamur on the other, the warriors prepared for a solemn ceremony. Painfully, Isai took his own infant son, his only child, from his wife. The mother wailed for the lost. Our hearts went out to her. After each of the Kamur warriors had touched him, Isai offered his son to the war chief of Hainam, who accepted him as the Tarop, the peace child. As long as the child lived, the peace would be kept and all the wrongs of the past would be as though they had never been. The child was given to the care of a Hainam woman who would rear him as her own. Then the warriors gathered at the manhouse and bound the two war chiefs with a bow, symbolizing the oppression of war. With the cutting of the bowstring, the peace was sealed. I'd been baffled by it at first, until God gave me the grace to see that this was his means of making clear to the Sawi the good news that Carol and I had come to bring. In the same way, God saw that peace could not be unless he gave his son. With the Sawi peace child, the peace lasts only as long as the child lives. But God has sent the once and for all peace child, the Christ Torah, and he will never die. We couldn't have imagined the impact of these words on Isai. Because he'd given his own son, he grasped them fully, became our first Christian, and began telling others what was in his heart. In time, there were enough Sawi Christians to begin the construction of a church, a structure of a height and circumference they'd never seen before, yet using the same materials they used to build their houses. Carol's clinic and her reading classes grew and grew, while I took on a translation of the New Testament into the Sawi language. The missionary planes began flying in frequently, bringing help and materials to the growing church. The church was completed. Now Sawi tribesmen from villages that had once feuded endlessly with each other gather under its dome for fellowship. Isai became just one of the lay preachers in the congregation. Here, the Lord's Supper is celebrated with a roll of cooked sago, the staple of the Sawi people. And because the Sawi are without native drinking vessels, a tin can is our communion cup. As missionaries, we are dedicated to preserving all that is good in the art and culture and customs of the Sawi people. But encroachment from the outside is inevitable. Carol and I thank God that the gospel of Christ got here first.